Hey guys, after a self-induced rest period slash hiatus on the podcast here, I'm back with Volume 5 of our Readers' Questions segment. I got a couple questions I want to get through today, very interesting ones. First of all, we'll go to Casey. Casey wants to know what our thoughts are on the new album by the band Attila. Well, for anyone who's read this site for any amount of time, you can probably guess what we have to say about that album. But since it was asked, I guess I'll go a little bit into it. I haven't listened to the whole thing because I don't want to waste my time. But there's a lot of problems with that album, and not least of which is just the attitude of this band. As far as my experience with them, they seem to be one of the leaders in the new wave of garbage metal. It's just disposable. There's not a lot going on that really deserves any attention whatsoever. It's just out there for people who want to mosh or headbang or just put something on and pay no attention at all. But my bigger problem than the music is just the people. And we've discussed before, what do you hate more, a band or their fans? In this case, it's the band. Their lead singer had some rant and diatribe about homophobic slurs and how he doesn't understand why calling someone a faggot is a problem. I think I'm going to get the quote wrong, but it was something to the effect of when did that become offensive? If you're offended by the word faggot, then you're a faggot. So I apologize for using that word so many times in a row there, but just thought it needed to be said. So that is not a band that will ever get my time or money at this stage of the game. I think I would rather listen to 10 straight hours of Disturbed than to digest that nonsense. Unfortunately, I think their album did fairly well sales wise. So it's hard to say that most people don't like them, because obviously somebody does out there, and that's kind of a shame because there's so many other things you could be listening to, so many better albums that you could get for yourself. It did sell, 14,000 copies in the first week. That's party metal, I guess is what they call themselves. But yeah. So there you go, Attila, about that life, ruining metalheads one person at a time. On to better things. Thank you for the question, Casey. Jessica would like to know the one album that you always go back to. Well, that's an interesting question as well, because I'm sure all of us have those 5 to 10 albums that are always with us, whether it's on our phone, MP3 player, CD, whatever. The ones that no matter what the day is, if you go, gee, I don't know what to listen to, boom, you have it right there. For me, there are a couple, and I think most of them kind of occupy some of my favorite albums of all time. The one album that I always have on me at all times is Catatonia's The Great Cold Distance. That was an album that really helped define my interest in metal when it came out in 2007. And I've bought that album 3 different times. There was the regular version, and there was the tour edition, and then the 5.1 stereo mix, which also has a couple of the B-sides on it. Not all of them, but a couple. I also bought all 3 of the CD singles from it, which have the remixes and the B-sides, all of which are awesome, which always kind of made me wonder why some bands can't put out an album worth of good material, but Catatonia has an album worth and remixes and B-sides that didn't even make it. So that's probably my one major go-to album. There's also Opeth, and it's going to sound weird to pick this one as my go-to from them at this point. I think all their albums are great, but for whatever reason, Watershed kind of comes to me as my Opeth albums always have on me. And it wasn't always that way. It was Blackwater Park for a while. It was Ghost Reveries for quite a while. But Watershed seems to embody all of the great things about that band. You have a song like Heir Apparent that's heavy as fuck. And then you also have songs like Coil and even Burden, which has that psychedelic thing to it. So I think it's the best of both worlds from Opeth, so I always have that one on me. I'd like to have an Iron Maiden greatest hits around too, because Iron Maiden has a lot of great songs, but they also have a lot of albums, and it's hard to find one that has everything I'm looking for on it. That's one of the few bands where a greatest hits album seems to come in handy for me. But I would say that those are, the ones typically that I always have around and that always make the rotation. No matter what, I can always throw those on and enjoy myself. So thank you for the question, Jessica. And I do wonder, obviously, for the people listening, what your go-to album or albums are, because that's an interesting question. And our last question for this week comes from Dan, and Dan wants to know about. Let me see. What are some of the major tours you're looking forward to seeing this year? Oh boy. Well, I mean, I'm trying to stack up, some shows and really, get myself ready to see as many shows as possible the end of the year, because typically, as far as being a metal fan in New York, it's it's tough sometimes to catch the shows you want because they all come around the same time. So there are a couple that I'm looking forward to, and one that I already know I'm going to miss. But August 8th, which is next week, Irving Plaza in New York City, Winter Sun is playing, which I'm very excited at the prospect of seeing them live. I'm hoping to make that show. I'm not guaranteed, but I'm hoping. It's going to be a really fucking good show. I will be in Seattle in mid-September, and I will be catching Alcest with Anathema in Seattle, which I'm very excited about that. Seeing Alcest once was not nearly enough. But unfortunately, at the same time, while I'm in Seattle, it was announced yesterday that Catatonia has put out their dates, and it's a tour that I am so pissed off that I am probably going to miss. But it's Catatonia, Intronaut, Cult of Luna, and Tesseract. Now, Tesseract is a band that I'm not into. I have friends who are. I have been told that their new album is the best album of the year and what have you, but it's just a band that I can't seem to get myself into. So I'm not excited about them, but Catatonia is always a good show, always. Intronaut put out one of my favorite albums of this year so far, and Cult of Luna as well. So, that is a show I don't want to miss, but unfortunately they're on the East Coast while I'm on the West Coast, and on the West Coast when I come back to the East Coast. So I don't think I'm going to get to see that one. Maybe things will change, maybe the dates will be expanded, maybe they'll come back around on a second leg. Regardless, I will try to get out to at least see Catatonia, because that's kind of been a tradition for me. When they come around, I am there. So, yeah, that's about it for me for tours. As far as I remember offhand, I mean, there's a lot of small shows have come through semi-locally that I've seen and missed at the same time. But hopefully there will be more. So, guys, thank you again for your questions this week. Keep them coming to our email, sorroweternalblog@gmail.com, as well as our Facebook, facebook.com/sorroweternal. In case you didn't know, you can also find us on Twitter at sorroweternal. Feel free to send hashtags and whatever the hell else you want. You can also find us on Google Plus in a variety of metal groups. And we are, in fact, on the new MySpace, as if anyone gives a flying fuck. But, we expand our horizons. So, there you go, guys. Thanks again, and we will catch you guys next week. Stay tuned for the regular podcast tomorrow night. Talk about some of the albums we've missed the last couple weeks, including the album from Philip H. Anselmo and the Illegals. Because after all, I walk through exits only because I can.